My guest is Dr. Emilio Justo, who was born in Cuba. He fled as a refugee with his parents to the U.S., overcame poverty and discrimination, and achieved super success as an eye and cosmetic surgeon by age 27. He is also a two-time international TEDx speaker. His 2023 TEDx talk, titled Delayed Gratification, Your Superpower to Success, has received more than 5 million YouTube views and is listed as the #3 most watched TEDx video in 2023. In today's episode, Dr. Justo and I talk about his book titled The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. Welcome to Lifeology.
Thank you so very much, James. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. I stumble over those words. It's funny. All the things you've done, I had to edit some of those things because you have so many accolades, but I also am very honored that you're here on my show as well. People don't know this. This is a retake. So I always think the second round is even better because we know what to expect now. Anyway, so welcome to Lifeology. Congratulations on the success of your book. Your first book that we just talked about. I'm looking forward to really delving into that and seeing all the different things you can teach us regarding that. So with that in mind, let's jump into I want to hear a little bit more of your origin story. So your family fled Cuba I believe when you were 3 years old?
Yes. So when I was 3, we left Cuba. Actually, an interesting story. My father, who never believed in Castro, when Castro first took over, he commanded everyone to go to their local bank to turn in their currency for a new currency. And my father did not trust Castro, so he buried his money in the backyard. Well, It turns out later, a year or so later, he was able to use the old currency, which had value, to get tickets on the black market through a Canadian diplomat that he had befriended. And we left via Mexico. We're there for 6 months. And then back in the mid-'60s, it was quite common that many church organizations in the United States would sponsor Cuban refugees. So we were sponsored by Central Christian Church in Gary, Indiana. And so that's where we originally settled.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were with Michael Jackson as well.
That's right. Yes. Yes. You remember those times. The Jackson 5.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about this before the show and I forgot to look it up. But if a country says their currency is no longer valid and they change it, I was trying to figure out what would then warrant the new value of the currency if a country decides to change it. I'm sure you don't know that, but that was just a random factoid.
I don't know the specifics. All I know is that it was due to the fact that my father buried that currency, that he was able to actually use it with this Canadian diplomat. And had it not been for that, I may have been living in Cuba as we speak right now, which we wouldn't be speaking.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting. I mean, whether he realized it or not, but the foresight and the insight he had regarding that, I think is brilliant. So I'm so glad to hear that obviously that you were able to come to the U.S. as well. Now, in Gary, Indiana, you thrive there. I remember you're a cosmetic surgeon, but I remember you had some, how do I say this? You're very popular in school, but you had a certain ailment that affected your skin. Tell us more about that.
Yes. So growing up as a freshman in high school, I developed a extremely severe case of what's known as acne conglobata. So severe that it caused what's known as a fever of unknown origin. So I had a persistent fever for about 6 weeks, and I was going to specialist after specialist, and no one could determine why I had this fever. So I was hospitalized at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago. They did all sorts of CAT scans and testing, thinking that perhaps I had some unusual cancer or something. Nothing turned out. Ultimately, because the acne was so bad, I mean, I literally had pus pockets all over my face. I mean, it's really hard to even imagine because you really don't see kids with it. And so I ended up having 3 surgeries while being hospitalized. I was in the hospital a couple of months during my freshman year to debride everything. And then I had skin grafts, et cetera, et cetera. That finally did get rid of the fever. But clearly for a young man who's 14, I mean, that's a lot to go through. But, when I think back, it's interesting. I mean, to me, it's my life story, so I don't really think much of it. I remember my mother, bless her heart, was always worried about me. And so after I had recovered and the skin grafts had healed, she was asking me, taking me to to places that would help me put on makeup and things like that. And I kept telling my mother, look, I don't need that. I'm fine the way I am. And then even later, she took me to a plastic surgeon who wanted to do essentially a facelift after tissue expanders to remove some of the scars. And again, I declined. I said, look, I'm okay with it. This is who I am. I was always, reasonably popular. I mean, I wasn't the most popular kid in school. It wasn't like that, but I didn't shy away from girls. I dated like anyone else. And so it's just part of my life. And even to this day, there's that occasional little kid, or even, sometimes even an adult who asks me and say, hey, were you in an accident? Were you burned in a fire? Most of the time I don't get into the story. So I just acknowledge whatever they say. I say, yes, I was. And then I move on, because these are strangers, right? These are people I may run into at a gas station or something. But it's just part of my life, and I'm good with it. That's what's made me who I am.
And I really appreciate that, because it wasn't your identity at age 14. Yes, it was something you went through, but it sounds like you had the resilience and the ability to separate between what life throws at us, because it's a challenge or it's an opportunity to learn or grow from it. So, even it is obviously what we'll be talking about today, but you had that as a young child as well, to separate between what is what. And so, that's who you are today. It's part of who you are. It's part of the wonderful tapestry of your life. And so that's part of the foundation of it. But the great thing is you can separate between a life event versus a situation versus who you are at the core. Now, was that what led you to becoming a surgeon or becoming in the medical field?
It's interesting. I've had that question so often throughout my life. And, the honest answer is, I don't think so. I mean, maybe in some subconscious level, perhaps, but the reality of it is that even prior to that, even in junior high, I was always interested in science. I always had a leaning towards medicine. There was nothing else that was really attracting me. And when I first went into medical school, truly, I thought I was going to go into obstetrics. That was my goal. I wanted to go into OBGYN, and it was very soon after starting medical school that I really thought about it and said, do I really want to be up in the middle of the night delivering babies? Because to me, I'm the sort of person that I cherish my sleep. If my sleep is disturbed, my next day is just miserable. Yes. So I quickly took that out of the equation. And then for a variety of other reasons, I chose ophthalmology.
Oh, wow. Okay. So recently you have been more in forefront when it comes to self-development, kind of transitioning. Sounds like you've always done that as far as the self-development, self-improvement, but now you're doing that more mainstream. What was the transition for you to go from the medical field to do your TEDx speaking and write your book?
Yeah, well, I think a combination of factors. Throughout my professional career, I really devoted my time and energy into the medical practice. And so I didn't really do a lot of other things. I was really super focused. But now as I've gotten a little bit older and I look at life a little bit differently, I look at my own mortality, how long am I going to be in this world? I thought to myself, it's time that I really get out and do some of the other things that I've wanted to do. And so sitting on my stationary bike, pedaling away, I'm kind of going through YouTube, and I see a little infomercial that talks about TEDx speaking. And there's an organization that helps individuals prepare for, write TEDx talks, apply for them. I mean, it's an entire process that's super, super complicated, believe it or not. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity. So I joined this group. They kind of assisted me. Went through the process, submitted over a 2-month period. I worked every weekend on applications because it's very difficult to land a TEDx talk. They say that it takes on average 90 applications to land one talk. Well, over a 2-month period, what? So over a 2-month period, I submitted 86 applications, and then 1 month later, my family is vacationing in Canada, and remember, it's July 5th. We're having lunch in Banff, Alberta, Canada. And I get a phone call saying that I've been accepted to this TEDx talk in outside of Denver. And it's 5 weeks later, and I still have another week remaining on vacation. So when I get home, it's now 4 weeks before the TEDx talk, and I haven't written the talk because the way they teach you to do this is to basically bullet point your talk when you fill out the application. So I had 4 weeks to write the talk, to practice the talk, to memorize the talk, and then to deliver the talk. So so I pulled that off. And then amazingly enough, the TED organization released the talk onto YouTube within 5 weeks, which is very fast because sometimes it can take up to 6 months for them to release and publish the video. And so it was released, and miraculously it took off. And as we're sitting here today, it has 6.1 million views. I just checked before going live with you because I was curious. I don't check it as often anymore. And so that kind of started the process. And because the talk did so well, I thought, gosh, I need to write a book. And that's what really stimulated writing the book on the power of pause, mastering delayed gratification for success, which, by the way, let me plug myself here.
Please do.
So here's the book, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. It's available on Amazon, and it actually did hit number one in 3 or 4 different categories about a week ago. And so I can now officially say that I'm an Amazon bestseller.
I love
whatever that means.
No, but that's amazing. I love it. I love the fact that, you had a week to do all that, prepare for it and everything. I mean, obviously you knew what you were going to talk about, but the preparation of that and really expanded it. Because it's what, a 20-minute talk you're able to do?
I think it was maybe 11 and a half minutes. Nowadays, the TEDx talks they want them to be shorter. I mean, traditionally over the years, a lot of them have been 18, 20 minutes, but the TED organization is pushing shorter talks because people's attention span, 20 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. Yes.
So most of them nowadays are between like 10 to 12 minutes. And I just did just a few short months ago my second TEDx talk, which is on obsession. It's unleashing the drive within, the obsession advantage to unprecedented success. And I did that at Western University in Ontario, Canada. And it's just been out on it. This one took longer for TED to get it on YouTube. So it's only been out maybe 2.5 weeks. And I just checked again before the show, and it has over 450,000 views. So not bad in a couple weeks.
Congratulations. I mean, I want to definitely, there's so much that you just said that I want to unpack and talk about, but congratulations on all your success. I mean, obviously you have so much to say. And one thing I really appreciate about you, in fact, when I was in post-production, the first time we did it, I showed a couple of my staff, and we were just talking about how humble you are. It's nice to see someone as successful as you are and to see how humble you are. And I think it goes so far. And I think it really speaks to how you were raised, but also just your character. So I really want to, you don't need me to say that, but I just really appreciate how humble you are about all your success. And I'm honored to have you be a guest on my show today.
Oh, James, that means the world to me. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. My pleasure. And of course I wouldn't say it if it's not true, of course. Now I wanted to jump back into the whole aspect of the concept of your book. What was it that really, I guess, we all have life lessons, and so we write about what we know. What was it specifically that helped you write your book, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification?
Well, I think truly it goes back to the fact that my wife and I mean, I'm blessed to have just a super, super supportive wife. We've been married over 20 years, and we have 3 lovely kids, boys that are 19 and 17, and then a young daughter who's going to be turning 13 in a couple weeks. And really a lot of this delayed gratification topic, although it's been part of my mantra throughout my adult life because I lived it, I didn't think about it on a conscious level as a child, but as I got older in my teen years and in my 20s in college, I really thought, gosh, this is really an important concept. But now as a parent and raising our children, I found it to be an incredible challenge. I mean, I mean, to this day, it's just a challenge. And you and I have talked a little bit about this off camera, that it's a difficult thing because teenagers nowadays, it's all about instant gratification, right? They think that, they open their social media, they think they can become popular, famous overnight, they can make money overnight. And we try and educate our kids that it really requires an incredible amount of hard work, perseverance, resilience, embracing failure, being able to make those mistakes, being knocked down and being able to get back up. And we preach this to our kids and our sons in particular who are older, and they acknowledge it and they seem to understand it on the surface. But truly, in my heart of hearts, I don't think they're really internalizing it. And the reason I say that is because I still hear them make comments that clearly are counter to what I'm preaching to them. So that really was part of the stimulus. And to me, writing the book, I just wanted to get my thoughts out there in the world so that one day when I'm 6 foot under, that I've left my legacy to my kids and maybe someday my grandkids. And by the way, just as an aside, I also part of the reason why when I wrote the book, after I finished writing it, I actually did an audiobook and I narrated it. So when the book came out, it's also on Audible. And the reason I say that is not so much that I'm plugging it, but being on Audible and being the narrator myself. And I have a whole introductory chapter that's dedicated to my family. And so it's my own voice. So that will live on eternally. And so whether it's our children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren or the world at large, they will hear my voice narrating the book. And I really just wanted to put that out there. To me, it's just a legacy thing. It's not about being famous or popular. It's just a legacy to my family.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. I think that's actually a little aside there. What I've usually tell my clients that I've worked with in the past is when you have, elderly parents or whomever, you always want to make sure you have recordings of them as much as you can, either from your phone or anything at all about their life. Try and have them share as many emotions as possible to really capture that. So therefore, when they do pass, you have all that information as well, or have all the data right there. But that was very smart of you, just like your father, the foresight that you had to be able to do something like that for generations to come.
Thank you, James. And if I can just backtrack a quick moment, because I wanted to follow up. You were so kind to make the comments about being humble. But with that being said, I mean, I must say I preach to my wife and I preach to our kids how important it is to have humility in our life and to have gratitude. And I preach it to, I have medical students that rotate with me in the office. And just a couple of weeks ago, I had this wonderful female medical student who really sat down with me, and it was really touching. She asked me all sorts of personal questions about my background. And she said, well, what are the things, what are the 2 or 3 things you would tell me to be successful in my career? Yeah. And what I said to her is, you have to always, always, always maintain humility. You may be the best doctor or surgeon in the world, and patients may look at you as godlike. Doesn't matter. You have to maintain humility. You have to maintain a sense of gratitude in your life. And the fact that God has blessed you with these skills to help other patients in medicine, just be grateful for that gift and pass it along, but don't let arrogance ever get in the way. Do not let that. And it's so easy for any of us to slip into that mindset of arrogance that, we're so much, we're better than someone else. No, we're all human beings. We each have our gifts and our pluses and minuses, but stay humble and stay grateful. Yes, well said. Yes, because we all know those people that are very talented, but they're also just their personality for just don't appreciate it. I always tell people when you come into a room, how do people respond when they see you? If they're excited to see you, wonderful. If they turn their heads or they look away, probably want to read the room a little bit better. Maybe present yourself a little bit differently moving forward. I wanted to jump back into your book. If I remember correctly, there were three core components when it comes to mastering delayed gratification. Is that correct? Yes. Well, the maybe not so much to master delayed gratification, but certainly the foundations for it. The foundations in my life have been, number one, self-discipline, number two, perseverance, and number three, delayed gratification. So those three aspects, which I do talk about in the book, that's what I refer to in one of the later chapters. I call it the Cuban triad, quote unquote, is self-discipline, perseverance, and delayed gratification. Because without those three, I think it's very difficult to achieve full success. And I don't mean financial success. I just mean success in life.
Sure. Can you give us an example of delayed gratification, of how that played out in your own life?
Certainly. Again, being an immigrant to the United States and not having things handed to me, I never really had that instant gratification up until recently. So basically, I didn't know any better. It was just part of my life. I had a wonderful childhood, a wonderful upbringing. I mean, I was always a happy child. But basically, it was that delayed gratification and pushing through, even through my setbacks, like we talked about, the acne and being hospitalized for 2 months. But even prior to that, I don't know if we talked about this before, that my early upbringing, when we came to the United States, I didn't grow up with my parents. My parents settled in Gary. My grandparents came shortly thereafter, and the church organization that sponsored them was a Presbyterian church in a small little college town in northwest Missouri called Tarkio College. So my parents, when I was growing up, my father was working 2 full-time jobs in Gary, one at U.S. Steel, one for the church. My mother went to Southern Indiana, to Bloomington, at where Indiana University is, to restudy because she had her doctorate in education in Cuba, but she had to restudy. They sent me to my grandparents, so I grew up with them on the college campus. We actually lived in the dorm, in a little dorm room, the three of us, from kindergarten through 4th grade. And so I grew up and had a wonderful experience. I was constantly surrounded by college kids. It was just wonderful experience. And so then finally at the end of 4th grade and starting 5th grade, my father had saved enough money, purchased a home south of Gary in Crown Point. My mother finished her studies and she was teaching high school. And then I moved to Indiana, and that's where I did the rest of my growing up. So in a sense, that was kind of a delayed gratification because I really didn't grow up with my parents, right? And then then going through, as with any physician, right? The physician journey from an educational standpoint is not a short journey. So going through college and medical school and then residency, and then I finished early. I kind of did a fast track and finished residency at the age of 27, finished medical school at the age of 23. So I was very young. So when I first started practice in Arizona, I was 27. I mean, it was ridiculously young. Because most doctors are well into their 30s. And so then just starting practice, it was delayed gratification in the sense that I didn't know what I was doing. I had no business experience. I never took a business class, a finance class in college. That was one of my regrets. I wish I knew more. But basically, I was just kind of mudding through. And the first half of my professional career, really, I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of big mistakes, and a lot of financial mistakes. And it was really in the second half of my career where I finally learned from those mistakes, and my professional career really took off. But I've made lots of errors in my life, and I talk about them in the book, that you have to be able, as my wife has consistently preached to me, when life deals you lemons, you have to make lemonade. And she continually reminds me of that because I've made every mistake known to man.
When we look at a situation, we think we failed or we made some poor choices. Sure, that may be true. But if we look at it in a broader stroke, it's more of how does one thing lead to another. So if we, as I said, if we are too myopic or too focused on one thing, we don't see the bigger picture. So I always like to think of our life as every event in our life like a jigsaw puzzle piece. We've all done a jigsaw puzzle before. And so when we put all those pieces together, it makes sense. And we're like, it's perspective. But when we isolate an event and be like, I can't believe I did this. What was wrong with me? I was thinking, this or whatever. Unfortunately, that causes us to focus on that and not the legacy or the perspective, the retrospective viewpoint of something like, this makes sense now. I didn't like what happened to me, but I love who I am today. So I couldn't be who I am today if I hadn't gone through those things as well. I was thinking about this as you were talking about the delayed gratification. Maybe this may or may not make sense, but I have many favorite quotes, but this particular one is, strength that comes easy is not strength at all. And so in some ways that kind of reminds me of delayed gratification. If it's just given to you, if strength is given to you and you didn't earn it or didn't work for it, it's not really strength. It's just simply, a microwave version of what strength would really be. So really being able to work on something and earn it, the sweat equity, all the hard work that one does, can really appreciate it more. When I used to teach at university years ago, it was interesting to see, you'd have the adult students, and then you'd have the regular kid students, and the young students. But you'd see such a difference in the students in their approach, because the older people who paid for that class, they were sat in the front row, and they paid so much more attention because they knew the value of the class and they wanted to be there. Where some of us, including myself, it was like, this is just a general ed course. I don't really care. Didn't really care as much and didn't put as much energy into it. But those older students, my gosh, I'm sure you've taught before, but if you have an older adult student, it's fantastic. They're like one of the best students to have, but they really understand the power of the dollar.
Absolutely. I mean, I know this in our own life, because my wife, in the last 4 or 5 years, has been taking courses at community college, and she takes it so seriously that she's always the number one person in the class, and she excels and gets A+, because she devotes herself, because she has a different mindset. And the same thing you were talking about, when you have your own sweat equity that you earn it. Absolutely. I was just on I was on a podcast this morning, and we were talking about the fact that, like one of our sons asked for me to invest in him, to fund him to start a business. What kind of business, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure he knows, but he just wants me to pay for him to start a business. And it's like, I'm sorry, I love you, and I'll take a bullet for you if I need to, but I'm not going to throw money into starting a business. You need to figure out how to do it, how to make it successful. And you need to take the lumps and the hits and the failures and make it across the river to the other side, still alive. But I'm not going to just simply hand it over to you. And I just saw my wife just sent me an Instagram post last night from, one of those Shark Tank people, Kevin O'Leary. And basically his Instagram post was talking about the same thing. He said, look, I can give my children anything they want or need financially, but the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pay for their education, and then the rest is on them. I'm not going to fund them to be successful. They have to learn and earn to be successful themselves.
Yes.
And I fully 100%, my wife and I are simpatico on that. We're in the same, we feel very strongly.
Yes. I always like to think that we are successful as we want to be. And so in other words, success can be measured in many different ways, but when we're focused on it, whatever we want to be successful in, we can be. Sometimes people don't realize that success can be, you can be successful at being unemployed. And once again, nothing wrong with people are unemployed, but if they're not working towards something else, then that's a different story. But we can be successful at many things that we might not realize is considered success, but it's just what you do more of, that is what your version of success is. And so if you look at your life, not you, but if people look at their life and say, I have these goals, but are my actions today meeting those goals? So for example, if I want to save a certain amount of money, am I purchasing a lot of things on, Amazon or whatever? And so in that, we want to look to see what is what matches with what. And if not, well, we're successful in not saving our money, but we have a goal that's very different than what our actions are actually showing today.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
I was looking at the time here. We've gone over, and that's totally fine. I have lots to edit, but there's so much. I'm like, what do I have to edit out of this? But it's been such a pleasure having you on my show today. My viewers and listeners want to find out more information about you and to purchase your book and learn more about you and watch your TEDx talk. Where will I find all this information online?
Well, please go to my personal website, which is dremiliojusto.com, and that's spelled DREMILIOJUSTO.com. On there, you can see the TEDx talks. You can have links there. There's a link to my book, which is on Amazon. Again, The Power of Pause, Mastering Delayed Gratification for Success. there's a link there. You can get the audiobook through Audible. And you can message me through the website, and I'll receive your message personally, and I will make sure and respond to it. So I'm always available for anyone if they just want to chat, if they want to do a Zoom meeting, if they need someone as a speaker to an event or corporate function. So I'm available. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, wonderful. Yeah. And I highly endorse you. You don't need me to do that, but I highly endorse all your work. If my viewers and listeners want to find out more information about you, just simply go to the show notes at jamesmiller@lifeology.com. I'll have Dr. Emilio Justo, all of his information there. I'll have your TedX talk in there. I'll have your book in there. Everything that we've talked about today will be all consolidated in that particular post. So once again, thank you so much for being a guest on my show, sir. I truly appreciate all your time.
Thank you, James. It's been an honor, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.